78% of buyers don't want to work with a salesperson. They prefer a sales rep free experience. And that's because I feel like you come in just like with your guard up, being like, this person's going to try and hard close me on this call. They're going to do the, hey, what keeps you up at night kind of thing. Right. And just everything that's going to make your skin crawl. And so I feel like it's better to address those uncomfortable questions early on.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 56 of Sales Stories in Real Life. I'm your host, Alex Bruski, and this is the show where professional salespeople share their stories about memorable buying experiences. For those of you that have been with me for a while, you can see I got a whole new background here going, got a new setup. Let me know what you think of it. And it's a special occasion. We've got a buyer guest here today, Aminrazavi. He is an AE at Thoropass. The story of how this recording came to be is too good to not share. For those of you who saw it on LinkedIn, there was a very public debate between two vendors. The post was blowing up and getting a lot of attention. AJ put a comment in the thread along the lines of, since this post is getting so much engagement, I might as well shoot my shot. If anyone needs a demo of compliance software, let me know. And I just saw it and thought it was hysterical and said, this is legendary. We got to get together and record an episode. And so here we are. AJ, I heard you had a really, speaking of memorable experience, when you were apartment shopping in the city, in New York City. What happened there, my man?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I never thought that random comment of me shooting my shot would end up shooting my shot on getting on a podcast. So that's really cool. But yeah, on to my apartment stories. Currently living in Washington, D.C., but lived in New York for a long time. At the time was working in entertainment, actually. So I worked in reality TV, which was really random. But I move into New York, and anyone that's lived in New York knows that getting an apartment in Manhattan is hell on earth. There's nothing worse than doing that. And there's a whole process where if you want to get an apartment, it's not like any other city where you can just hop on Zillow or apartments.com and find an apartment, put in an application. There's a middleman, which is typically the broker. The broker works with the agent or the owner of the property, and then they trickle down back to you. You can view the apartment, and I guess in exchange for typically 1 month of rent. So you're typically talking about paying 1 to 2 months of rent, depending on how nice the property is. If you're typically expected to pay this person 10, we'll say 8 to 12 grand. And remind you, this is a rental. So needless to say, it's a pretty arduous experience. And I was not looking forward to it at all. I was moving from a studio, ready for my first 1-bedroom. I knew what neighborhood I wanted to live in. And I, started finding apartments. I reach out to the agent, hey, I want to view this apartment. And instead of being yeah, sure, let's do it at this time, he's like, hey, why don't you come to my office? We'll discuss it, and I'll show you a few apartments that you might be interested in. And I'm like, dude, I asked for this apartment. Stop giving me the runaround. But I go to his office. And it was such a unique experience. He was like, come to my office, sit down for a minute, which they're usually very brash, these brokers. And he's, let's sit down and tell me what you really are looking for in an apartment. And I was like, I don't know, 1 bedroom on the Upper East Side and under $3,000. And he's okay, but what else? What do you like to do? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I love to cook. He's okay. So it sounds, and he just pulled this reverse sales dude on me. It sounds like you need a place that has a kitchen, and you don't really have a preference on if it's this, but you want to make sure that the neighborhood has X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. He's cool. So based on that criteria, I created this list, and I'm going to take you around to the apartments, and I don't want you to feel pressured by me. So I'm going to go ahead and just give you the keys. You can go inside the apartment, view it yourself, have whatever conversation you want to without the presence of me being on your back. Come back. We'll give you a rating of 1 through 10. So you could be apartment 5. I would give that a 9. So I did that. I viewed probably 15 apartments in that day, which was absurd. No one typically does that. And I came back and I was like, I don't really remember which one I liked the best. And he had this full list, was like based on the criteria you gave me earlier. This is how you ranked them. This one is outside of your budget. This one was below your budget. Which one do you think you're going to go with? And so it was like such a painful experience that became actually like enjoyable. It was almost like playing a game show. And I was just like, oh, like this one wins. It's like a 9 and it's over my budget, but I'm gladly about to spend like an extra, I don't know, like probably 10 to 20 grand over that year of rent in Manhattan. And I was excited about it. And I was like, Jamal, here you go, man. Here's my cashier's check. I'm ready to move in. Let's do this. Interesting apartment experience. I ended up living there for like probably 4 or 5 years. So I loved the apartment and I ended up becoming within my budget over years of like more experience. And yeah, it was a uniquely great experience shopping for an apartment, which I never thought I'd say, but here we are.
I'll tell you, I've done apartment shopping in New York too, and I can attest it is absolutely brutal
Yeah.
outside of the whole middleman experience
Mhm.
that you're talking about. For those who have never apartment shopped in New York, basically anything on the market is gone in the same day, right? There's no,
Mhm.
oh, let me take a couple days and think about it, right? It's like you got to get in there and you got to apply
Oh,
or else you
absolutely.
miss it. And that I think really ties in very interestingly into his whole approach around touring when he was
Mhm.
like, hey, you go in there by yourself. I'll give you the keys, right? Because normally these experiences, as I just gave context to, is you got to decide pretty immediately, right? And
Yeah.
this is a big decision, right? We're talking
Mhm.
multiple tens of thousands of dollars a year, right? We're talking about the place that you live, the place you're going to spend the most time. And it's without a doubt a very high pressure sale. And he almost like just snatched all of that pressure away and said, hey,
Mhm.
here's the keys. Like, you go do what you want, right? Like, how did that land for you as a buyer?
Yeah, for me, I was almost like it was like disarming. Like I was just like, oh, you're not gonna come into the apartment with me, and I'd be like, oh, this bedroom is too small, and you'd be like, I don't think it's too small. Like you could fit a twin bed in here, and I'm like, yeah, I don't really like a twin, but you could fit in a twin. There wasn't like that like sales like pressure back and forth. It was more just like, hey man, you go and see how you feel about it. And I'd walk in and be like, it's dingy. I don't know, maybe this could work. It has a nice kitchen, but I like this about it. I don't like this about it. I was really able to form my opinion on my own, which didn't feel like it was like a hard close. If I'm going to transfer that to a B2B SaaS thing, it's almost like at the end of the call, if it's like you're have like a committee of buyers and you're like, so are you ready to sign right now? And they're like, it's awkward. And they want to have that conversation on their own to be like, I think this was a really good idea. This is going to provide us a lot of value. Let's go ahead and sign that contract. That's how it felt to me. He like took out that awkwardness of it and let me really come to my own decision and even spend more money than I was planning on spending. And he was like, I'll show you a range. Some are a little bit higher, some are a little bit lower, knowing I was going to fall in love with the ones that are more expensive. And I'm like, I need this. I need a dishwasher. Absolutely.
That's the beauty of it all to me is that I feel like when people do add that pressure, they
Mhm.
add that pressure because they feel like it's going to make them more
Mhm.
ACV or commit, right? Or whatever, right? Like they feel like it's in their best interest to do.
Mhm.
Whereas when you literally and figuratively give people the keys, right? Like they're going to go and get what they want. You've done your presenting of options properly. Like they're probably going to naturally progress
Mhm.
towards either a higher cost option or one that fits them better. So I think there's a ton of B2B relevancy there. And even
Yeah.
at the beginning of the process, like you said, hey, I want an apartment in the Upper East Side. Like many buyers these days, I'm sure we're probably 60, 70% of the way there, right? New York, there's countless places you
Mhm.
can live, right? For those that aren't familiar with the five boroughs. And like for you to be like, hey, I want to live in the Upper East Side, which is a little pocket in the upper
Right.
northeast side of the city, you had already narrowed your options down
Mhm.
tremendously. And then I think this kind of ties into there are a lot of hot takes around demo on the first call, right? Don't demo on the first call. And you were, hey, I want to see the demo of the Upper East Side, if you
Yeah.
will. And he
I'm like,
almost
don't
kind of
waste my
pushed back
time.
on you. Yeah. And
Yeah.
was like, hey, let's talk about this first. And you even said you begrudgingly went to his office.
Yeah.
And then it turned out to be a better process. This may not necessarily be directly tied to SaaS because depending on the buyer, they may just be like, hey, look, I really need to see it right now. But sometimes you can push back a little bit, be like, hey,
Yeah.
look, I want to make sure that I'm showing you stuff that actually matters, right? Like, I don't want to just
Yeah.
poke around the platform just for the sake of poking around the platform. Tell me what's important to you. I'll show you those most important things and we can take it from there. So I feel like there are inevitable ties into B2B process there.
Oh,
What was going through your head at that time? Like, I know you had mentioned like you went there begrudgingly and then it turned
mhm.
into a good experience. Like, what kind of tipped that scale for you?
Yeah, I think it's funny when you mention like how even in like the SaaS space, like a lot of buyers already come educated because like I already did that. Like I went on Reddit to be like, where in New York do I live? Where in New York do I want to live? I was moving from Brooklyn at the time, and I was like, all right, what neighborhood's going to be within my price range? What's going to be like where I feel safe? What are the kind of like restaurants that I want to go out to?
Right.
So I came in like knowing what I wanted to see and thinking I knew where I wanted to live. Like I was like, boom, this is the apartment I want. Jamal, show me this place so I can finish this paperwork and like we can part ways and never be in each other's lives again. Like I never want to see a broker again in my life. But he came in and like he very well could have just been like, okay, sure. Shows me the apartment. I'd be like, I don't know. Let me go set some more like appointments for tomorrow with someone else and see what they have. But he like forced me to be like, what are you really trying to get here? I was like, yeah, an apartment, like somewhere to sleep. He's like, but what do you like to do? What do you really started like diving in deeper, which made me like actually think, what do I want in an apartment? And he's like, if you're gonna spend $10,000 to $15,000 in just my commission check, don't you want to live here for a while? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you want to live here for at least 2 or 3 years to make it worth it. I'm like, you're right. So he's like, so what's something that you're going to grow into? Think about your income potential next year or the year following. This might very well be within your range, and it's going to have the things that you're going to want in 2 to 3 years. And I'm like, okay. And it shows me this like list of places that like I probably wouldn't have seen. I wouldn't have picked myself. I'd have been like, that's above my range. I'm not going to even bother. But then I ended up finding an apartment I love with everything that I needed. And I did grow into it. So, and I continued to hang out with Jamal, even on the personal level for a few years. Like it was, I somehow became friends with a broker.
Man, shout out to the folks like Jamal that are holding it down for the whole profession there. I
Mhm.
love that too, because it went from like a moment of uncomfort, right? You could have easily just went to another broker, right?
Right.
Let's call it what it is. But
There's so
just
many too.
that gentle insertion of
Mhm.
uncomfortability, right? If you will. Just that one, okay, look, I know that you really want to find a place, right? You've probably been looking for a while, and take this frustrating moment and turn it into a really positive buying experience to where now
Mhm.
you're like singing Jamal's praises and hanging out with him. I love that. And so you're an AE, right? So obviously you're an IC, you're an individual contributor.
Yep.
Love getting the takes of leaders and ICs and buyers. So why don't we kind of transition into you
Sure.
when you're selling a deal, right? And you find success in your sales processes, because obviously compliance is a crowded market, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of people that do what Thoropass does. And
Yeah.
just like you could have went and gone to any broker, like any person that talks to you can in theory go find a competitor, right? That's the case for all of us. Let's call it what it is. So like, how do you find areas in your sales process to add that moment of uncomfort that you know is going to turn the buying experience positive?
Yeah. That's a really good question. And I think like early on in my sales career, like really, I'm still pretty early in my sales career, but in the grand scheme of things, like first started demoing and I'm like, oh, like that feels uncomfortable to ask. I'm not going to ask it. I'm going to like breeze past it. But it's not like that feeling doesn't go away because the buyer already came in feeling uncomfortable. They're like, I have to do this. I think it was one of your other podcast guests, actually, Jen Allen Knuth, which I like saw this weekend, gave this presentation about like 78% of buyers don't want to work with a salesperson. They prefer like a sales rep free experience. And that's because I feel like you come in just like with your guard up, being like, this person's going to try and hard close me on this call. They're going to do the, hey, what keeps you up at night kind of thing.
Right.
And just everything that's going to make your skin crawl. And so I like feel like it's better to address those like uncomfortable questions early on to just be like, hey, listen, I don't even know if we're going to be able to help you. And there may be a solution that's probably going to fit you better. So let's find out what you actually need. If we can help you, I'll tell you how. If not, I'm happy to refer you to someone that can. Like really being cool with, even if deep down, obviously I don't want to lose a sale. I never want to lose a sale. But deep down being like, I'm fine if I lose this. It's not really about me at the end of the day. It's about, do I get this person what they need? Is this person going to continue buying from me probably in the future? Absolutely. So like, why not build that relationship early on? make it like actually real. Talk to them. Someone hit me up actually today being like, hey, I have a good sense of what you do. Like you nailed your value pitch. Like you're trained on this, obviously. Like you've been indoctrinated in like the Thoropass way. What's harder is tell me what your competitors are doing well. And so I have a good understanding of, so I don't have to go out and do the research myself and unearth all these things over 10 different demo calls. Just shoot me straight and tell me like when would be a better time for me to honestly choose your competitor. And I was like, that's actually a super solid question. And I was honest. I was like, hey, this is probably what you're going to get if you go with these guys. And if you're at such and such stage, or this is what you're looking for, you might be a better fit for them. And that was just a way, like almost like Jamal pulled that, hey, I don't need to go in the apartment with you. You go view it on your own. I feel like it really took the pressure out of the sale. And now I have a relationship with that person that anything else I suggest to them, they're probably like, I trust him. Like he's going to shoot me straight because he just told me everything I need to know.
I love that. And for me, I think like the common thread that always comes from it is like not only showing that you're not afraid to lose the deal, but also that you're willing to suggest the option that doesn't make you or your company the most money is like
Yeah.
the way that I like to think about it. So it's like
Yeah.
going to someone, and this is something that a lot of people preach. Also, shout out to Jen Allen, fantastic, one of our first guests. I know the presentation that you're talking of.
Yeah.
But knowing who you're not for is almost
Yeah.
more important than knowing who you are for. Because
Oh,
when you sell crap deals to someone who didn't need it, they're going to claw back, right? They're going to churn in a year, right? And you're just living from deal to deal.
yeah.
Whereas, to your point, when you tell someone like, hey, if you're looking for this, go to them, right? If you're
Yeah.
looking for this, come to us. If you're looking for X, go to Y, right? Like
Yeah.
you're really not only like building trust and showing all sides of the coin, but you're also establishing yourself as the expert in the space, right? They
Yeah.
don't think of you as AJ from Thoropass. They think of you as AJ, the guy who knows the compliance market, right? And
Right.
then they start sending you their friends and their colleagues, right? And then to your point, they start buying more in the future because they know
Right.
that they could trust you and you're going to recommend what they actually need rather than what's going to make you or the company the most money. And I love how you said how early on you were uncomfortable with those
Oh,
questions and now
so
you are.
uncomfortable.
What was like, if you could pinpoint one thing, what was the catalyst for that, right? What was that moment of, ugh, and we've all been there, right? This might be a little too expensive for them, but let me just not say anything till the end. And maybe they'll say
Yeah.
yes. It never works out. It never works out.
No.
Like that thing you're thinking in the back of your head, your customer is thinking in the back of their head probably 3 to 5 times as much as
Yeah.
we are. So what was maybe like a moment or a catalyst for you where you were like, you know what, even though I don't want to ask this question, I really do have to for the
Mhm.
sake of the buying experience. What was there like a specific moment or a specific
Yeah.
catalyst for that, or how'd that go?
No, I can literally like picture the day. I'm like, I'm having a meeting with my manager and I'm going through like my scratchpad pipeline. I'm just like, huh. And they're like, hey, so you have a lot of deals in here. Like you have like 35 like active ops. That's really exciting. And I'm like, yeah. And in my head, I'm like, haven't heard from this person in 4 weeks. This person won't respond to an email. I've sent them like 4 different emails. And I had so many ops just like that were not real. I was like, yeah, I don't want to close them out because they might need us. And then I was like, all right, why do I have all these things? Why do I have people ghosting me? And why do I have just like all these deals that I know are not going to go anywhere? And I'm like, it's because I didn't ask those uncomfortable questions early on. So I don't really have any reason that they're like, no. Whereas now I'll find out early on. I'm like, hey, listen, like, is such and such, is this within your price range? Or is like, are we like super far off here? And I talked to someone like 2 weeks ago and they were like, yeah, you're super far off here. I totally understand. They're like, we talked to so and so that's going to give us this for that. And I was like, honestly, if I was in your shoes and that's really like an offer that you have, that's pretty good. Like, I would take that. I'm not going to like nickel and dime here. Like, this sounds like it's way out of your price range. And it's probably better for us to reconnect maybe in 2 or 3 years, like when you're in a different stage of your company. And I was able to like close that op like within 3 days and be like, I'm not going to spend my day now chasing this dead deal rather than spending my time on these guys that I know are like very qualified, very motivated, and I can build more value and spend more time getting this thing to close faster rather than spending all my time trying to make something happen that I knew would never happen. I was just too afraid to actually ask.
Dude, this is such a great thread that you're pulling on here, and I'm really particularly passionate about this because I'm pretty sure we've all been there at some
Yeah.
point in our careers, right? To your point, where you have this really full pipeline, but you're like, "Ugh, I haven't heard from them, but I think they might want to buy," right? And it's just like a whole bunch of that, right?
It has legs.
Exactly. Rather than, hey, you might have a thinner pipeline,
Yeah.
but you know where every deal lies, the
Mhm.
rights. I really love talking about this because it seems from a seller perspective that, like, hey, let's keep all the opportunities open, right? Let's have as big of a pipeline as
Yeah.
possible. But then to your point, you end up spending all of your time chasing deals that aren't going to happen rather than progressing your ones that are real
Mhm.
or finding new real ones. And
It's like
I
trying to fit like a square peg in a round hole. If it's not going to work, close that deal and find another one because there is like a round deal that you could fit in that hole and that they're going to be perfect for it. And they're going to be like, this is awesome. Thank you so much for finding me and solving this problem that I have. Rather than like trying to jam this one in to be like, can we please give me your money?
100%. And it perfectly leads into my next question. Like, I know that there are a lot of B2B sellers that are listening to us right
Mhm.
now. And for those that are still listening, we appreciate you. I think this is a perfect time to maybe tail off to, like, what's your big takeaway, right? Like, you've gone through this progression in your career, right?
Mhm.
Where you've been afraid to ask the uncomfortable questions. Like, you're now embracing that, like, kind of the total opposite and having maybe a thinner but realer pipeline. Like,
Mhm.
what would be your one big takeaway that you'd give to our B2B sellers? If there was one thing that folks could retain from this episode, what would it be, AJ?
Yeah, I think honestly, it's go for no. Try to get to that no early on, whether it's prospecting and you find out that they're not a good fit, whether it's like a deal and you find out that there's no budget there, or there's like a deal breaker in the software that is going to be a shortcoming. Get to that no, hey, we're probably not a good fit early on rather than chasing your day because your day could be spent in 1,000 better ways, even if it's just relaxing. Like don't need to follow up on that deal because it's not going anywhere because early on that they've already give them that room to like say, hey, this apartment isn't really a good apartment for me. This one's kind of better. And this is the one I want to go for. So I think just like being cool with that playing out is something that like would be my biggest takeaway, I guess. There's so many, but
We're focusing on one right at this
yeah.
second. But no, I love that. Spoken from a true IC vet that's been there, done that. So really appreciate it. AJ, this has been
Yeah.
absolute blast. This is our second apartment story, actually, and both had like really similar common threads, in fact. So it's funny. And this
That
the
is
other,
funny.
the other one was in Chicago, right? It doesn't matter, like Chicago, New York, right? Like no matter what, like all of these buying experiences that are memorable in a positive way have these like same threads that keep coming out of them. So I
Yeah.
love picking that up for the folks that are listening and help them insert it into their sales process. So without further ado, AJ, obviously you're leaving hilarious comments. You're producing at Thoropass. Why don't you plug some with the audience here before we jump? What are you working on?
Yeah. Yeah, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn. I'm always posting content on there. I just like posting humorous content there. And if anyone needs compliance, shoot or shoot, hit me up. You know where to find me.
Kobe.
Kobe.
If you need compliance software, give AJ a call, hit him up on
Yeah.
LinkedIn, go follow, all that good stuff. Sales Stories in Real Life, fam. Thank you for hanging with us once again. Hope you like the new setup. We will catch you next week. Cheers.